Welcome to Steeped in Wellness, brought to you by Matcha.com. Here we spill the tea on wellness trends, personal growth, and the latest health news. Now, here are your hosts, licensed dietitian Diana Weil and medical journalist Laura Hodgebateris.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's episode.
This week, we have Vinny Crispino, who is the founder of Pain Academy. He's a movement specialist and former competitive athlete who turned a devastating back injury into a mission to help others reclaim their bodies. Through Pain Academy, he's guided thousands towards pain relief and functional strength using simple, sustainable movement practices. Welcome, Vinny. We're so happy to have you.
It's so good to be here. Love the intro.
Doesn't it always feel like someone singing you happy birthday? That's how I always feel.
I feel like I need people to introduce me when I meet anybody like that. That was lovely.
Yeah.
Short, sweet, simple, and direct.
So as someone who's also had a really devastating back injury in like a past life, it feels like at this point, how'd you injure your back?
So I was a great swimmer. I swam competitively when I was younger, so I was always really confident in the water, but I was a much better swimmer than I was a surfer. When I moved to California, I had these ridiculous dreams of, growing my hair out, wearing board shorts 24/7, just being that cool beach surfer guy. And I ended up paddling out because I was strong enough to get out into the waves, but I was not a good enough surfer to manage double overhead waves. And it was just a foolish mistake. I went for the wrong wave, way beyond my capacity. I wiped out and the wave threw me it was a shore break. So my lower back hit a rock. It just took the full force of impact. And, just like that, I went from being this strong, capable, never really having physical adversity with my body to being terrified of scares. I fractured my T12 vertebrae. It was multiple herniations. The subsequent nerve damage shifted my spine 21 degrees to the left. I lost sensory feedback of my left leg. So I literally was looking down. As soon as I came up for air, I looked down at my left leg because I didn't feel it. I thought it had been, I can be dramatic sometimes, I thought it was ripped off. But it was just kind of floundering there. And it hurt a lot.
How did you get back to shore?
I'm convinced that the years of being uncomfortable in a pool is what saved my life that day. Because I just went right back to what I knew. I rolled over onto my back, kind of like a sea otter, and I did these little sculling motions that we learned at the Olympic Training Center, these little weird movement patterns with hands. And I went from being on my back to doggy paddling, back to doggy paddle, back and forth until I finally was able to just crawl myself out of the ocean.
That's crazy. Yeah, I mean, especially with a back injury, because you always hear you shouldn't move. He should remain still until anyone helps you. And you were flipping back and forth in the water.
That's sound advice when you're around people and when you've got access to help. And when you're on your own, and I know it sounds so stupid saying I was in survival mode and on my own, it was Malibu, but nobody was on this beach break. Nobody was foolish enough to go out surfing at this shore break. And so it was me out there. And there was nobody to be a voice of reason and say, hey man, stop moving and let me call some help. I didn't even have that reason. Once I crawled to my truck, instead of grabbing my phone and desperately dialing 911 to get an ambulance out here, I did the kind of stereotypical male thing. I'm fine. And I need to be alone. And I drove home.
Wow.
And
Oh my gosh.
it was the first time I've ever driven without music on. And I'm just white knuckling the steering wheel, holding my breath at every turn in the road. But there was this just deep-seated belief of, what the hell just happened? I need to be alone. And maybe that's old childhood stuff coming up of just isolation.
We've had therapists in other episodes, Vinny.
Yeah, well, we need to have him here because there was a lot to unpack in that day. I defaulted to the only tool I knew how, which is to just be alone and grit through it.
Okay, so Vinny, you get yourself home. Mm-hmm. You're hurt pretty bad. At what point do you realize, hey, this isn't some rub some dirt on it kind of situation?
Yeah, so, like I said, I was a swimmer, so I didn't have physical adversity. It was not a contact sport. I never really had an injury, anything even remotely close to this. And so I kind of just thought, well, let's sleep it off. I went home, I crawled into my room and just spent the rest of the night on the floor. And I just kind of knew all night, oh, this is getting worse. This is not getting better. I'm not going to wake up feeling better. And so in the early morning, I had a friend just take me to the hospital. And then, my story is probably like a lot like most people's, which is let's go get the scans, let's go get the trauma specialists and the doctors and the nurses, and what's going on? Let's come up with a game plan. What's the diagnosis and what is the next step forward? And, I remember seeing my scans and just being terrified. It was like, that's my body, that's my back. And it being so, I was in physical shock, and then I was in like this mental, emotional, just like full disassociation of, oh, I'm broken. And on top of that, you've got somebody coming in with way more knowledge and education about the body than I do, saying, well, you need to operate. We need to fuse this together. And this is what the game plan is. This is what life is going to be like. Here's the risks. Here's the complications. And I'm in my early 20s, just still terrified, in shock, processing, disassociating. And then this like ego came through of, no, there's got to be a different way to do this. I reject that opinion. Send me home with the brace, give me drugs, let me go talk to somebody else. And I think my story from there is, again, probably like most people's, which is, what do you do when you're in pain? You panic, you throw the kitchen sink at it, you go from expert to expert. Everybody tells you a kind of slightly different variation of your problem. You go to a neurologist, the problem's with the nerves. You go to a rolfer, the problem's with the fascia. You go to a foot guy, the problem's with the foot. It just didn't stop.
I'm sorry, real quick, what's a rolfer?
Rolfer is somebody who specifically works with the fascia.
Gotcha. Thank you. Just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah, thanks.
I'm the lay person here, so.
Okay, yeah, well, good. Then we'll keep this conversation as available as possible. And years of doing this, years of going from experts to PTs, physios, specialists, chiropractors, acupuncture, massage, acupressure, just anything. Like, how do you come back after a life-changing injury like that? And it became a full-time hobby, not because I cared about health, but because like my life depended on it.
So one thing I also have a back, I feel very invested in this because I've injured my back when I was 19 and it's become part of my identity.
We'll talk about that.
Yeah, I know. I want to get into that. So one, I'm sure that someone who's come across, your journey is Dr. Sarnos. Have you heard of him?
Mm-hmm.
So he, for Alara and John and anyone listening, he was this doctor and people would go into his lectures in a wheelchair and, completely debilitating pain. And he would lecture and they would walk out pain-free. And so something that I've always struggled with is like, what's the mental and what's the physical? And I'm curious where you land on that. Like, where do you think the head game comes with pain versus like the physical part?
Yeah, so I've come to look at it as everything's a spectrum. Nobody neatly fits into a single category or a bucket. So on the spectrum, on one side, we've got structural issues. So that was me. When I broke my back, that was a structural problem creating issues. And on the other end of the spectrum, we've got neuroplasticity. It's the brain that's attached to this body. What is the brain doing? What is the human being doing that's going through this structural issue? And when we have a structure issue, which, by the way, and this can go into many different directions, so I'm going to try to contain this. Our modern understanding of pain science is now becoming incredible. Imagine you getting injured, like me when I broke my back, and instead of the doctors and nurses getting scans and imaging of my spine, they took an image of my brain to tell me if I'm going to be in chronic pain from this accident or not.
Wow.
So irrelevant of the actual structural damage and the nature of the injury, by doing a brain scan and seeing how regions of the brain talk to one another, with an 85% chance, and I don't like just throwing stats out, I can provide the studies in the show notes for the fellow nerds out there who want to dive deeper in this. With an 85% chance of accuracy, we can now predict and determine who is not going to heal. Not because your body's incapable of it, but because of how the brain processes pain signals. And this all comes from child adversity, this comes from trauma, this comes with your relationship with pain. So to make this real, when you have a structural or an acute injury, you process it in certain sensory regions of the brain. That's what a normal, healthy, regulated nervous system functions like. When your system becomes dysregulated through a whole range of issues and reasons, you process pain through areas like the prefrontal medial cortex and the nucleus accumbens. We're talking about areas of the brain that have to deal with threat and reward, memory, learning, and storytelling, and meaning. And for those people, and literally looking at this on scans, people who experience acute injuries feel pain in entirely different regions of the brain than people with chronic issues. And what we have to look at is what is an average window of healing time. So for example, a herniation could take 6 to 12 weeks to heal. Maybe up to 6 months if it's like something like an annular tear and it's really avascular tissue. So if we've got 6 months to heal, why does it still hurt 4 years later? Is it that your body can't heal? Or is it that you've so successfully have linked movement and pain? Just like if anybody's ever taken Psychology 101, what is the first thing we learn about? Classic conditioning, Pavlov and his dogs, right? What did he do? He rang a bell every time the dogs would eat. And then eventually he would take their food away and just ring the bell, and the dogs would have a real physiological salivation response. Well, if you're somebody who gets injured and these two regions of the brain talk to one another and they've got really strong communication, what you're doing is you're making meaning, you're developing an identity and a story of every time I do this, it hurts. That's conditioning. And when the injury is removed, when your body heals, but you have so successfully paired movement and pain, why wouldn't you still hurt? And we have to start asking real questions. When we get outside of the normal healing window of an acute injury, is your pain now more neuroplastic on the mental and the neurological side than it is structural? Well, there are really clear, simple ways to understand that. For example, if I break my leg, that's a structural problem. Anytime I go to put weight on that, that hurts. It doesn't matter if it's the morning or the evening. The structure is why I'm hurting. But people with neuroplastic pain, well, why some days I can walk, but some days I can't walk? Structural issues don't behave like that. Why is my back worse in the morning than the evening? Why does time of day matter? Why does time of week matter? Why does my ability to resolve conflicts and being around certain relationships heighten my symptoms? What does my brain have to do with producing a pain response? And when we start to see inconsistencies of symptoms, we can start to poke through this idea that your pain is actually physical. And we now have to look towards how can we actually reprocess it in healthy ways and learn better coping mechanisms, better tools.
Vinny, you're blowing my mind right now because I have a family member that was diagnosed with fibromyalgia. And there's this constant debate is, does something physically hurt, or is it just her brain telling her that it hurts? And then it could go into a whole psychological profile of her in another time. But what you're saying is really got me thinking about her situation, and again, how much of, like you said, is neuroplastic versus physical. And I know that might be a unique situation, fibromyalgia, but you really get my gears turning now.
I have to say this because it bears worth saying and repeating many times. If you feel pain, it's real.
Sure.
But it might not be what you think it is. And when you start to understand that every body has a brain attached to it. What is that brain doing when you're feeling things? And where things can get very complicated, pain can be both very simple and very complex at the same time. And I'll be really vulnerable here. I broke my back. Yes, that's true. Did it hurt like hell? Yes, that's true. And I was also in a marriage that I had a kid at a young age, 23 years old. And I just kind of did like okay, well, we're just going to get married now because we have a kid. And it wasn't my person. And when my back hurt, I didn't really have to hang out with them. And, I was lonely and I didn't really get attention, but I did when my back hurt. Remember, the nucleus accumbens, threat and reward. I unknowingly at the time started to actually find all of these little dopamine rewards for being in pain. I had a great excuse not to go to the gym. I had a great excuse not to push it hard. I had a great excuse not to eat like a regimented athlete, and I can eat sweets and like whatever because I was rewarding my injury. And when you start to learn how to reward pain, and I'm not saying it's voluntarily chosen, none of us want to suffer. But if we're in a chronic long-term situation of suffering, at some point we have to have a hard conversation with ourselves of, what is the benefit of my suffering? What do I actually get from this? And that can be a very hard conversation to have. I bet the listeners right now, two camps of people. One camp is like, oh, interesting. And the other camp just recoil defensiveness. I didn't choose this. I don't want this. I hear you. And we have to look at why there was such an emotional response over this. We have to.
Well, I think I was also a former competitive high performance athlete, and you were rewarded for going to the pain cave. Like if you worked out and you weren't sore and hurting or vomiting or like on the edge of maybe giving yourself rhabdo, like you weren't doing enough, right? You weren't going to be given that gratification from those around you, thinking like you're stepping up to the plate and giving it your all. So something funny that stuck out to me while I've been pregnant, pregnancy is not the most comfortable thing, but funny enough, I've been keeping up doing CrossFit classes, like all through my pregnancy. But I've noticed that I'm just less sore while pregnant. So I don't get that dopamine hit from my workout. I'm kind of like, I'm not working out as hard as normal. Like nobody's noticing me at the gym. I'm not the same. I can't do a high rocks competition. And part of me wonders, they say that, especially the last few months of pregnancy, the baby, is siphoning a ton of my energy, a ton of my brain power that I just am not thinking about it that way. And it's all going to baby. And to a certain extent, maybe my mind is conditioning my body to handle the pain that comes with childbirth.
It's not a far stretch. And your story, your relationship with intensity, that's a really big variable that does not show up in an MRI and it doesn't show up in an X-ray, yet could be a really significant part of your healing journey and your recovery. So to make that real for anybody listening to this, again, former athlete, go big, go home.
Yep.
I only saw value in intensity. What does that do to your body long term? Well, it does a couple things. It means that you kind of get this addiction to that sympathetic, the fight, flight, freeze, the go system, the adrenaline, the cortisol, the let's get things going. Heart rate variability tends to suffer from something like that. But more importantly, when you mix that personality trait with a painful scenario, are you going to find value in the more intense methods, the more complicated, the more expensive? Or are you going to find value in learning how to breathe and learning how to be calm and learning how to sit with yourself? Hell no. You're going to go big, go home. That's your thing. And something I always joke with my members, which is instead of go big, go home, go medium and sometimes stay inside. And that's a saying that resonates with a lot of people because The exercises that didn't work for me were the same exercises that worked once I changed my relationship to intensity and pain. I only knew how to find my edges and grit and white knuckle it and push through things. So no wonder when I came to this method that I now teach people, which is like softness, gentle movement, how to actually find 20 to 50% intensity. And on a very neurological level, like I don't want to train your body to feel your edges every time because all I'm doing is just conditioning you to hurt. I want to find your window of function and train your nervous system that movement's safe and that movement can feel good and that you can actually have discipline and it's okay to just feel good. It's okay to go through a workout class and leave it feeling good, not like somebody's got to pull you off of the ground.
Yeah.
And that's really important when it comes to therapy. You know, the grit that it takes to become an athlete is not the grit that it takes to heal yourself. And the challenge is learning when one tool no longer is serving you and how to learn a completely different tool.
I want to back up for a step because what you're discussing right now is fascinating. But I want to come back to how you went from, on your journey, this injury and getting all these different opinions to learning this stuff and what prompted you to start Pain Academy.
Probably about 5 years into my injury. And, you know, I was being passed around from young intern to young intern at PT clinics, physiotherapists, me always bringing in these really thick folders of look at what's going on. And no, we don't need any of that. Like, we got it. We just being in the system for years and putting myself in significant financial debt. Probably 5-ish years into it, I had another huge flare-up, went to go to another pain management specialist, and the whole game plan was to just renew my drug prescription. Jeez. Here's more Naxaprin, here's more narcotics, and let's manage the pain. That was it. Like, that was the grandiose plan. 5 years after breaking my back, still being functionally disabled, still not really being able to hold or play tag with my son, let alone physically actually be able to hold him, I was getting worse 5 years after my injury. And it kind of dawned on me that, you know, sitting in this car looking at both of these new refreshed prescriptions, nobody cared about me. Or they didn't care about me in the way that I needed to be cared for. And I had this thing where, like, I just thought paying somebody was going to fix my problem. You know, like, here's a couple grand, like, you got it, right? Like, you got me. And what I was missing was actually learning how to participate in my own rescue. And that's something I talk about a lot. And so sitting in this car, I said, to hell with this. I'm going back to school. I'm going to learn the stuff that these people know so I can give myself the care that I need from them. And more importantly, I can give it every morning, every midday, and every evening. And so I started off with whatever available certification I could, started off getting a certified personal trainer, then corrective exercise specialist. I spent time doing short course programs of exercise physiology at Stanford School of Medicine. I went into education acquiring mode. And at this point, being 5 years in and going to all these different schools of thought, I learned very quickly what doesn't work in the way people say it does. And I learned very quickly no one body fits into a protocol. And I learned very quickly that people need tools to make a change. They don't need treatment. And there is a huge difference between active therapy and passive therapy. So passive therapy, and this is no knock on any other profession, but like passive therapy is like bringing your body to a chiropractor and they do something to you. Great, cool, could be an amazing catalyst, an amazing stimulus of change. But if you are not actively creating that change daily, what in the hell is going to stick? Once you stop paying for relief, the relief stops. And so it shifted me down this path of what is active therapy? How do you participate in your own recovery? How do you actually drive changes yourself? Because what I realize is that nobody cares about you more than you. Nobody knows what it feels like to be in your body. Nobody knows what your pain and exact symptoms are like. All you can do is try to like find words to, I guess, describe it, but nobody knows. So you're actually probably the person you're looking for. What's missing is the education and the tools to work with and listen to all these symptoms. And so fast forward, I'm burning through all these methodologies, finding what doesn't work, what kind of makes sense and works. And I finally get to this practice of like posture therapy. What the hell is this going to do? I don't need to fix my posture. I got a broken back, man. And for an hour and a half, this mentor, this practitioner, he didn't touch me. There was no adjustments. There was no machines. There was no aggressive, complicated equipment. It was just lie on the ground and let's get this to move. Now let's get this to move. And what do you feel? And where do you feel it? And this person was like guiding me back into my body. And the entire time I'm thinking, this is such BS. Like, dude, do something. Fix me. Like, come on. I'm wasting my time and money here. And I remember standing up. And, I wasn't fixed. I wasn't cured. It wasn't a miracle. But I was like 5% better. And if I can get better and nobody can do anything, then all I need to do is just learn this at home. And if I was desperate, if I could get 5% better, hell yeah, great. If I can take that edge off a little bit, beautiful. And this is what started to like launch me into this new direction of like, how do you learn these things at home that anybody can tap into? How do you learn how to regulate your nervous system? How do you learn how to reconnect with your body instead of numb, suppress, avoid, and escape it? Like actually get back inside of it. What does that even mean? And how do you do it? And I spent every waking day from that moment on, from that first session, I remember being equal parts very hopeful and excited and pissed off. Why am I just finding out about this now? Why wasn't this ever covered by insurance? Why does it have to be out of pocket? Why did nobody ever recommend movement therapy? It was just, let's focus on the back. It was, let's focus on the symptom. And this movement therapy focused on my body as a system. No more, let's go after the nerve or the muscle or the fascia or the back pain. It's like, hey, Vin, let's help you move better. Let's help you feel better. Here are some tools, and now go practice it. And I started Pain Academy not because I wanted to start a business, but because like I needed this stuff the most. And then I started to share it. And then it started to work for one person. And that person told another. And all of a sudden, this is an unmanageable business practice one-on-one. My client schedule's full. I'm doing 60 one-on-one sessions a week. People are flying in from around the country, which was cool. Like it stroked the ego, but I'm also having to turn down hundreds of people a day who are reaching out, who are just as desperate as I was. And I started to look at, well, what is the common denominator in all of these unique programs and all of these weird, unique, random variables? There's a common denominator between all of them. And can I put that common denominator in a program and then release it to the world and then take this method to scale, which is what no practitioner had done before me. And Pain Academy was born.
That's such an inspiring story. I think there's obviously so much passion that you put into this, and it's, what Pain Academy has become is very clearly born from that. I think one thing and I'm curious if you felt this way, but for me in my recovery, it seemed like, okay, if I can't dedicate an hour and a half to 2 hours every single day to stretching and strength and rolling and massaging, that I'm doomed to just be in pain. And so then there's this certain aspect that's like, well, I don't have that kind of time every day. So I'll just throw my hands up and I'll just live the way that I'm going to live. Do you think that you have to dedicate an hour and a half every day? Do you feel like there's small, like, can someone just do 10 minutes, 5 minutes to their recovery?
Let's first meet you on a human level. I wouldn't spend 2 hours a day doing something that didn't work. Who has
Yeah.
time for that? I bet you'd spend it if it like anchored you and you felt amazing and it kept you feeling like movement is incredible and your body can do what you want and it supports you back. I don't think you need that. And I think this is the trap that a lot of people get in, and that's the trap that I get in too, which is, well, if I don't have an hour and a half, I'm not going to do anything.
Yep.
There is a middle ground. Let's start off with 10 or 15 minutes. I could give you a 2.5 hour routine, that'd be awesome, but if you're not emotionally connected to it, it's going to feel like a chore. And the moment self-care feels like a chore, it's not going to work. And it's not going to do what you want, because then you have this weird, oh God, I have to do this. And I feel like crap if I don't. Now there's all this like weird emotional psychology to it. And what are we doing here? We're creating another chore or like a prison of therapy. That's not sustainable. That's certainly not going to help you long term. What we have to do is meet you where you're at. If you have 10 to 15 minutes, cool. Let me show you what to do to make that as impactful as 10 or 15 minutes can be. And let's get this as easy as possible for you to say yes, that feels good. And then when we secure some wins, let's go 20, 25 minutes. And maybe that's your ceiling. Maybe that's all you've got the energy and bandwidth for where life's at. Great. I bet you doing a consistent 15 to 20 minutes a day is going to far outweigh this heroic hour and a half session you do maybe once a week that you're like forcing yourself to. And it's only creating more stress. It's only creating more cortisol because you don't want to do it. You want to go do 100 things and you feel held back by life. If we can get clear about what it is we're really trying to do here, which is to learn how to take care of ourselves, then let's do it in an actual sustainable way, not this gritting through it kind of a way.
I want you to imagine that you're 9 months pregnant. You're about to give birth next week.
Alara feels seen.
Yeah, I do. I'm like,
How
do
are
you
you gonna
guys want to
approach
see
the
my
pain?
belly?
There it is.
Hey! How are you approaching the pain? The pain of childbirth. What would you do?
That's a loaded question.
Have you ever been asked this question before?
Yeah, so I have programs for pregnant women that change
Okay.
depending on which trimester you're in to help prepare your body as best as possible so the recovery period is taken care of. So the first thing that I would look at, I don't know if if I have advice for you on the pain part of it. That's something I don't think any man can actually project and put themselves in that scenario. What I will say is pregnancy, it's really unfortunate how women are treated, which is the most significant change in a human being's body, let alone a woman's body, happens during pregnancy. And then you're just sent home with this kiddo and like, that's it. There's no protocol for restoring your body's function. There's no, hey, how did the body move and progressively move different for 9 months, and the center of gravity shift and the laxivity of the hips and the pelvis and the sacrum and the spine? Like, what is a woman's body going through, and how can we bring it back after a pregnancy like this? So I would first look at this as, okay, this is going to be an event. Let's try to get your body, probably nothing magical in the next week or so, but like, let's really look at how we can find a self-care routine post that acknowledges you're going to be wiped out as a mother. You're not going to have hours a day for rehab and self-care. You're going to have minutes. And those minutes are going to be measured in between bottle feedings, midnight feedings, and all the other stuff that goes on. So can we actually solve and help a woman's body by teaching her how to do nothing? What are the positions that are going to support this woman's body and give her whatever couple minutes she actually has? And to make this real, like maybe laying on your back with both legs over a couch and a chair, arms behind your head, and just reminding your body, hey, you're safe. We can take a couple minutes for ourselves. Let's find some kind of down state that we can tap into right now and use these little positions of zero work to remind your body and promote and help stimulate recovery. whether that's these gentle calming positions, whether it's breath work to help facilitate the recovery process. I would be looking at what tools do I have at my disposal that I can have as much outcome for as little like income in terms of time that I need to spend to actually get some freaking help and support here.
So one of the things I'm considering is I have a brother, he's a psychiatrist, who's currently running a ketamine clinic up in Boston. And like I said, this is my second baby. And I'm considering doing a little bit of ketamine treatment about like a month or two postpartum to kind of act as a kickstart in terms of, getting myself back into feeling like this is my body. And just kind of having a reset as far as the mental game as well, because the sleep deprivation, the amount of time that just is not yours anymore, it's deafening to a degree, right? Like that's what leads to all these cases of postpartum depression. So what's your stance on, using ketamine as far as chronic pain? Is that something you've ever tried before? Or?
Yeah, so actually, I just started that probably a month and a half ago.
Oh, cool.
I haven't used it to change pain because I no longer really have that unless it's chosen, like unless I want
Yeah.
to go run an ultra marathon. So I don't have it I don't have no experience of how to use that to help change the brain's processing capacity with pain. I hear it's helpful. I feel like it can be an ally. It's a medicine that can help facilitate a change, and you developing a framework while using ketamine, whether it's ketamine, meditation, breathwork, whatever therapy that you choose, I want you to look at developing a framework for going into that therapy. So, for example, you might only know how to resist pain, how to argue with it. You might only know how to tense up, have really unhealthy dialogue, and that probably shows up with your relationship with yourself too. Can we actually learn how to change our response with it? Can we build a framework for being able to engage with the sensation differently than just recoil, tension, fight, flight, freeze, sympathetic activation? Can we learn how to observe pain and discomfort without judgment, without expectation of changing it? Even it might sound silly, but can we actually just sit with it and look at, well, what shape is it right now? What's the color? What's the texture? What's the size of it? Can we actually practice observing something as it is without getting lost and tangled in what it means and start injecting our story and our identity and start arguing for our limitations, whatever happens in the mind when we feel uncomfortable? Can we lay down that framework? And what I'm talking about here is a very well now studied scientific process called somatic tracking. Can we track and change our relationships with sensations? And if you can do that now and then go into something like ketamine assisted therapy to help rapidly expedite your change process, that could be a hell yeah for a lot of people.
Vinny, someone was just asking me recently about how I feel about the full body MRIs that people are getting now, not for like you have an injury, but just as a preventative thing. And one thing that, I know a lot of times people can have herniated discs who are in no pain and don't even realize that they have it. I'm curious, do you have an opinion on full body MRIs and like people finding out that they have these things that aren't causing them any issues?
Yeah, so there's a famous rheumatologist, Dr. Daniel Claw, who is head of a rheumatology clinic, board certified. I mean, he's leading the charge with rheumatoid arthritis. And he's had some incredible papers written. And the titles of these papers are When Arthritis Hurts Sometimes. And he starts off lectures by holding up two scans. One is of an arthritic knee, bone on bone, zero cartilage. And the other one, it looks like a healthy knee of a 20-year-old, full cartilage. And he asks this sea of orthopedic surgeons and other medical professionals, hey, which knee hurts? And of course, obvious, right? Bone on bone. But that's not the case. It was a healthy knee that was presenting symptoms. So if structure is 100% of the reason why you hurt, why don't structural issues hurt all the time? For up to 40% of people that have been x-rayed and MRI'd who have bone-on-bone joints, they don't hurt. There are no present dysfunctions or symptoms or limitations within these joints. Furthermore, and again, I can put the study in show notes, there were large population studies of participants asymptomatic, so no back pain. I think it was like 1 out of every 3 people had herniations or disc bulges. 2 out of every 3 people had degenerative disc disease or symptoms that are blamed for why you're in pain, but these people weren't in pain. There is actually a very weak correlation between what is presented in an MRI and why you hurt, because not all structural issues create damage. They're more of a correlation than they are a causation. And so if we really look at the research and the data, and we get to the point of seeing that structural issues are present in people that don't hurt, we have to ask, what is the credibility of trying to go get a diagnosis? And what's hard here is because, well, it's important. Like, internal medicine's important. It saves a lot of lives. Preventative medicine is really important. And is the key word. There have been studies done with people who have back pain, and one split into 2 groups. One group is told, hey, you have a herniation. This is your diagnosis. And the other group with the same injury and structural issues is not given a label and a diagnosis. Which group do you think recovers faster? Which group has the highest rate of chronic pain users, participants? It's the ones that are given meaning to why they hurt. Going back to the start of this podcast and conversation, remember, pain being processed in the region of the brain that has to do with meaning and storytelling is what shifts acute issues into chronic long-term issues. And now when you're a person who has a sensation, because all nerves can do is communicate signals, something hot, something cold, is there pressure, does a muscle change length, so intramuscle pressure. It's just information for the brain. That's all it is. And the brain then decides, it interprets what these signals mean. So if you now have signals coming into your brain, pressure, and you now mix that with, 6 millimeter herniation. Oh God, that pressure is bad. Movement's bad. Bending the spine is bad. I'm broken. I should be afraid to move because of this diagnosis is terrifying. And what it starts to do in the mind is create meaning to our pain. And when we have meaning, we hold on to it. And it becomes a part of our story. So it's tough because the answer is really, it depends. It depends how preventative are we going. It depends on what is your ability to understand that not all structural reasons hurt. I think if we can equip people with the raw data and the studies that just because there's structural stuff, that doesn't mean there's a problem, and that correlation is actually, the causation of it's very weakly understood. Let's arm these people instead of, here's your diagnosis that you need a medical degree to understand, or you need ChatGPT, depending on what you have access to. Let's equip people with education instead of, here's your body and, oh my God, it's all so scary. You should be in way more pain. So it's tough.
Yeah, that's my concern with it too, is I feel like you might find something in an MRI that's not actually a problem that you then treat as a problem.
Yeah. And then you make a molehill into a mountain.
Yeah.
And then, again, I can relate a lot. I remember the imprinting of seeing my mangled back on an x-ray machine. And then 5 years later, my discs healed, my fractures healed, yet I'm getting worse. And then the doctor says it's in your head. He wasn't wrong. His delivery was terrible. What he was trying to say is how the brain has remained processing. Your brain still thinks there's an injury. And this is actually very well known and it's well studied. And here are treatment protocols to remind your brain of safety reappraisal. Here's how we actually lower the alarm of the brain's trained response. Because if you feel it, it's real, but it might not be coming from where you think now. You know, when we start to have this rap sheet, this MRI report that almost kind of becomes like a badge of honor. See, here's why I hurt. See, here's where I can't get back to work. Here's what I have to prove to the lawyer and the medical companies to show that I'm still disabled. There's validation in holding on to these stories. It makes it really hard for a guy like me to come along and say, maybe, and it's not because I know better than you. It's because maybe what you've been told, it's real, but maybe it's not accurate, you know? And people know exactly what I'm talking about if you've ever been in a really bad relationship and, you know, maybe you're like starting to get to know somebody, but like they don't text you one night when they're going out with their friends. You start getting worried. Who are they with? What's going on? Why? Your mind starts panicking and you start rapid firing texts like, okay, maybe not, like have fun. Maybe you send the all dreaded K cool text in lowercase. You know, you're freaking out. Well, those emotions are real, but are they accurate? Maybe the person literally their phone broke or died or is just having a great time catching up with their friends. Maybe they're head over heels about you and they underestimated their silence because they don't know you and your past. And the hard times of abandonment, the abandonment wounds that have shown up. They don't know that, but you know it. You're having a very real jealousy abandonment wound response.
Yeah.
It's real, but is it accurate to the situation? Sure, they should have texted back, of course. And if they can't, grab a friend's phone. Like, I'm sure there's a lot they could have done better, but recognize how real and scary that feeling is. If our brains can go through these experiences that are real, but maybe not accurate, i.e. a trauma response, can't they also do that with pain?
It's an incredible analogy.
Well, Vinny, you mentioned before we started recording that you recently, or I don't know if it was recent, but like you run ultra marathons.
Mhm.
And something that you struggled with is while running these ultra marathons, you're not in that much pain and you almost miss the pain cave.
Yeah.
So how do you keep yourself from, I guess, shifting back into that mindset and being okay with feeling okay and good?
And side note, I'm going to get a swear jar for Alara for her. She's put $1 in every time she says pain cave the rest of the way.
Sorry.
It's a real pain cave. I mean, when you've been in them, you know them all too well. Especially as an athlete, it's like, it's not just a pain cave. You make home there. You make that actually, that's your comfort place. And in fact, it feels so comfortable that without that sensation and stimulation, everything else feels weird. All of my childhood adversity people out there are probably going to relate to what I'm about to say. You grew up in a home of chaos. Yeah, sure, on the surface, you're looking for peace and calm, but that shit doesn't feel comfortable, does it?
No.
No. We sabotage the hell out of things to feel more normal. And the problem is when chaos feels normal, that's what we seek. There was a study done that actually looks at this. It put people in a room, a silent room for 15 minutes, and they were handed a buzzer, a little remote that gives them an electric shock. And they had the option to sit there in silence and calm or shock themselves.
Diana knows what I would choose.
Yeah, one guy shocked himself over 100 times in 15 minutes. Why do we do this? Because it's more known. It's more comfortable. What that study showed, I think it was like 60-something% of men, 30% of women, but the total came out to be 43% of total participants chose to shock themselves repeatedly than to be sitting alone in quiet. Because we're stimming our brain when we feel pain.
Makes you feel alive.
It makes you feel something.
Makes you feel something. Yeah, I think that's probably the better way to
Yeah,
put
it makes you feel something. And maybe that something is more known than not. And I explain it like if you grow up in the city, you're used to hearing sounds of crazy people yelling and cars honking and it's chaos, it's noise. And then you go on a vacation and it's calm and quiet. It's hard as hell to sleep. And vice versa, because you've normalized sensation. When I was in pain and I started to learn what I needed to do to get out of it, I didn't understand at the time, but I would also go on a tattoo spree. I ran out, but you can only do that for so long because you run out of real estate.
There's so much surface area.
Yeah, you only have so much real estate that you can give to a coping mechanism like that. And when I ran out of tattoo space, or my friends were like, okay, dude, it's enough. Like, stay away from the face, it's enough. Then I started to find myself doing something I've never done. I've never been a runner, but I liked hurting and I missed hurting. And when my back felt better, I didn't know how to just feel better. I had to go seek pain in some way, shape, or form because it was so uncomfortable to feel good, which was so weird because I had spent, at this point, 10 to 12 years desperate, going broke, trying to feel good, but I was not allowing it to actually happen. No wonder why I started and stopped and quit and put all these, well, I'm going to give this 3 months. That was me being silly. That was me sabotaging my actual ability to heal and make a change in my life because it was uncomfortable, because I normalized the opposite of it. Ultramarathon running became my ability to regulate myself. And the worst days were the days after I would run 30 to 50 miles because that meant I had to take the day off. And I was a mess because I didn't feel that pain.
Do you have any advice for, like, besides ultra marathons, like healthy avenues for pain? So as you can tell, I'm a pain enthusiast in some ways. So my husband and I, we're into the whole sauna, cold plunge craze. Are there any, like, healthy avenues for pain that come to mind?
I think the first thing is understanding the addiction to it. And that's hard to do because it requires a lot of, like, why am I doing this? Okay, it's under the guise cold plunge. Huberman said this sauna guy said this. I'm justified in my pain, in my search for pain. And that's okay. And running was a much healthier avenue than tattooing, I guess one could say. So I was just kind of trading one demon for the next. And it wasn't until I became aware of this, just trading one pain demon for the next pattern that was showing up in every aspect of my life. Step one was awareness. And when I finally became aware of that, I then started to look at who I was without pain and what pain actually meant to me and why I needed it, why I continually sought it. I'll give you an example. Like, I could never go on vacation unless I was running an ultra marathon on that vacation. I went to Patagonia, arguably one of the most beautiful places in the world. But the only reason why I went to run an ultra so I could then give myself 2 days off afterwards. I had to, like, earn the rest. And so my challenge to myself was, like, can I actually take a vacation without pain and actually learn to enjoy it? Are there healthy outlets and avenues for pain? I guess we could say, like, working out. Sure. I think there's a benefit to that. But I will tell you that that's also a short-term road. And so many people are on that short-term road because when that is your only relationship to pain, which is to, like, get it out through an avenue of intensity, you can only do that for so long and for so many years. And I think a lot of people in the back are, like, nodding along and raise their hands saying, like, yeah, I'm kind of at that threshold. And one of the things ultramarathon running taught me as I'm becoming more aware of this relationship with pain is that, yes, I could go do 30 miles hard, but if I wanted to show up the next day, I had to learn how to scale it back. I had to learn the discipline of, instead of bringing my runs to an 8 or 9 out of 10 pain-wise, can I actually be okay today running at a 2 out of 10? And, like, painfully having a phone call with a parent, Can I actually find something other than pain and intensity in my outlet for pain? Said differently, can I find different gears within myself? So not everything is full throttle all the time. And what that might look for you like, Alara, is going to CrossFit, and today I'm celebrating that my body can be here. Thank you. Thank you so much for allowing me to walk into this gym and even be capable of doing a CrossFit class. Can I show my body some love today? And there's something that I want to enter, and this might be an offshoot, but I think it might relate to the mindset of what we're talking about here. There was a woman who survived what I think is arguably the most intense experience I think humans have had to survive, which was the Holocaust. Her name was Miriam Elks, and she lost her husband. She lost everything near and dear to her life. And in an environment where everything is designed to dehumanize you. She eventually survived it with her son. And her son later on in life interviewed his mom and said, how did you do it? Like, how did you get us through this? And I'll never forget her response, because it changed my relationship to pain fundamentally. She said, I got through it by carrying two things around with me every day. One of them was a piece of bread, like a piece of it, and the other was a broken comb. I carried around a piece of bread because in an environment where you are taught that you have nothing to give, I wanted to feel like I still had something to give somebody else in need. Even though I'm starving, I still have something valuable to give. And she carried this broken comb, and she combed her hair. Even though it was falling out, the malnutrition led to a lot of hair loss. She combed what little hair she had left with this little broken comb, because she still wanted to show herself that she is worth taking care of and that she still has value. And it was in that day when I heard about her interview, running changed for me. My self-care routines changed. It was always about getting out of pain, getting more mobile, just goals, pushing, and health. And when I heard her story, the next time I tried running was, I'm worth being taken care of. I'm worth this time. I don't need to get anything from it than just like, thank you, body, for being able to run and be here with me today. The sun is up. The flowers are out. Thank you, God, for this moment that I'm capable of. I don't need to go validate that with pain. And my movement routines, my little self-care routines, they were kind of chores at this point. I do it because I have to. It was now, this is my moment where I get to show myself that I'm worth being taken care of. And if I can show myself I'm worth being taken care of, then other people around me are going to respect me. And if I can let the world into that I'm worth being taken care of, maybe other people will feel worth being taken care of. The ones who are broken and fragile and feel like nothing is working for them. And they're made to feel that way with all of the terrible messaging out there that something's wrong with you. You're doing something wrong if you hurt. Maybe pain is your call to learning how to just value being taken care of, and that you're actually the person that can do that. And so, when I heard Miriam's story, it changed everything for me.
I love the mindset shift of going from doing it almost as like a punishment for your body and working against your body to really doing it as a celebration of movement. And it's like working with your body versus against it. I know that we have to wrap up here soon, but I'm curious, what are some of your daily non-negotiables? Are there a few habits that no matter where you are or what you're doing, you make sure to do every day?
Yeah, so, when I started, I would say everybody goes through a journey with self-care. Self-care for most people is like non-negotiable, 45 minutes, here's what it is. Okay. That's a great way to start. And then I think as your relationship with it and your understanding of your body evolves, it goes from this, I'm going to move for this really narrow window, into like, how can I just microdose little movements throughout the day? Even after this call, I'm going to go do like one thing while I go make some matcha. Just one thing. One thing. That's it.
Yep.
And finding these little, standing in line at a grocery store, let me get a little internal hip rotation and just do a little something. I'm just microdosing and flossing through movement on a daily basis. So my non-negotiable is that I'll find some gentle ways to move. My non-negotiable is I'll find that I can be safe in my body today. How can I find that today? And some days it might look different, right? I don't have the do this hip stretch every day non-negotiable. It's, can I find safety in my own body? And sometimes that means just carving out 5 to 10 minutes a day, doors closed, headphones on, eye mask on, just finding time to be alone and reminding myself I got a roof over my head, I've got food in the fridge, a little bit of a gratitude practice. My body's here with me today, which means I'm okay. I'm okay right now. That's my non-negotiable. And when I do that, all of the other things like being a present and emotionally available man and a father and a partner, they just fall in line because I prioritize, if I'm safe, everybody around me is going to be safe.
You got to fill up your own cup if you want to fill up anyone else's cup.
You have to, and one thing I'll tell you, Laura, is it kind of goes back to Diana's questions about like, what advice do you have for moms? And it's like this pregnancy that's coming, this childbirth, and it's to take exactly that, even in these like little moments of you're going to go into full care mode for somebody else, and you are a strong woman holding down the family. Can I also feel like I'm worth being taken care of too in this moment?
Yeah.
And sometimes putting that on a partner or sometimes on the kids, that's just a part of a community. But like you creating that yourself, even if it's just 5 minutes, is like the anchor to get through a pretty turbulent time.
Yeah. No, it's good advice. It's very good advice. So we like to wrap up our episodes with 2 questions. We haven't prepped you for them, so feel free to take your time. What's something that you feel like you've had to learn the hard way?
I've had to learn that pain is not the enemy. And that is a mistake I made for years. Pain is an ally. It is your greatest gift to be able to have something that intimately communicates what's going on, not trying to make meaning of it, well, why, but it's a conversation. It's not a stop sign. And when I learned the hard way of how to no longer fear pain, but like allow it, befriend it, make it an ally, invite it in and make room for it, like, hey, you're a guest. You can be here today, but you're not staying forever. Like really how to be playful with it instead of try to like dominate it. That's when there were significant shifts in my life. And, I've shared this on my website or social media before, that pain is a lesson in disguise. And it will keep showing up until that lesson is learned. And for me, the lesson wasn't biomechanics. It wasn't academic nervous system regulation. It was that it's not an enemy. And the moment I learned that, the lesson really started to stop showing up.
That's a powerful one.
Yeah.
Okay, so our second question is, what is a life lesson or a motto that you have learned maybe from someone close to you or read, something that you kind of live life by?
We can directly tie this to pain science, or we can tie it to any other kind of thing that you're going to go through as a human being. There is this really small moment between stimulus and reaction. I'm going to butcher it. I don't know the exact quote, but if you know it, you know it. And it's in this space between feeling something and reacting to it that we have an incredible amount of control. And something that I've learned is to take my time and allow myself the response that I choose. And that shows up with pain when I feel it. Instead of that knee-jerk dialogue, that self-hatred, the God, here it is again, to take that moment and that space and then choose, how do I want to respond to this moment right now? Whether that's conflict with a loved one or a not loved one, or conflict within your own body. How do you want to respond to it? And the moment when you start to realize that you actually have a choice in your response, you just might be lacking a framework or the tools, I think your internal world changes.
Yeah, that's a big one for parents, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, and you know, I think specifically, like, something that's really changed my world with parenting is, and I learned this so early on, is, you know, kids will ask again and again. And when you as a parent can respond again in the same way, no change in tone, your response doesn't change, but it's still a calm, soothing no. What I've learned with kids is true with adults. Once they realize that they don't have control over your emotions and they're not going to alter your emotions and you are going to stay the same, whether they ask 100 times, they'll get it. And they get it much faster than you having to like argue or yell or like say anything like that. If you can just remain centered and no deviation, the world is going to learn very quickly that you are who you are and they have no power and control over you. And when you finally get to that place, I felt like parenting just took an incredibly beautiful turn in such a great direction.
Okay, well, we have to bring you back for parenting advice next episode.
Right? Emotional regulation.
Yeah.
And the most important thing, we need to do what I've never seen on a podcast. Let's bring the kids on
Yes.
and ask them
Yes.
what on earth it feels like. Let's not go off of these like podcast parents, but like let's check in with their kids. What's happening here?
I love that idea. Well, this has been truly, I mean, one, I feel so calm just listening to you. I feel like you have such a calming, wise presence and so much good advice. I'm really excited for people to listen to this one and, you know, get some good nuggets. But where can people find you if they are in pain and they want help and they really resonated with this? Where can they find your work?
Yeah, please check me out on social handles at Pain Academy, or if you really want some more help, go to painacademy.net. I understand what it's like to be frustrated and be let down and feel like you have to start another something and maybe there's like disappointment already on the horizon. I want people to feel what I'm talking about. There's no pressure, no commitment. The first week of my program is always free. I want you to vet me out. I want you to feel how your body changes and responds with what I'm going to teach you. And then if you want to continue with me as your mentor, I'd love to help you.
Awesome. Well, Vinny, we loved having you. Hope to have you back.
Yeah, same. We need a round two.
Sip, savor, and live well with new episodes of Steeped in Wellness every Wednesday. Follow our show for free on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you're listening right now. Leave your questions and comments below. Find us on Instagram at Steeped in Wellness Podcast, or for more, click on matcha.com.